Former close friend of convicted killer Taylor Parker describes a heart-pounding encounter as testimony continues in the penalty phase of the trial.
What drives a person to fake a pregnancy, murder an innocent woman, and steal her unborn child? A tale so twisted, it challenges everything you think you know about human nature. Taylor Rene Parker's case is far from what it seems. This isn't just about a stolen child. It's about a dark and dangerous deception that led to an unthinkable crime. And then, the heart of the story emerges. It is October the 9th, 2020, a day when Parker's lies unraveled in the most horrific way. For months, she played the part, faking a pregnancy, drawing those closest to her into a web of deceit. But on this day, her deception turned deadly. Reagan Simmons-Hancock, a 21-year-old woman, was murdered, her baby stolen right from her womb. But the shocking truth about what happened next, that's a tale you won't soon forget. I'm so glad you're here. If you want to uncover more real-life true crime stories like this one, hit that subscribe button right now. And don't forget to ring the bell, because you'll want to know what happens next in this chilling case. In the quiet corners of East Texas, Taylor Rene Parker's life was marked by hardship. Born on December 8th, 1992, she had 2 children previously. But due to a hysterectomy, she could no longer conceive. Though the medical world had confirmed that she could not carry another child, Taylor's longing for motherhood never faded. Her relationship with Wade Griffin, a man who had entered her life with dreams of a future together, was beginning to strain. The fear that her inability to conceive might push him away began to consume her. In desperation, Taylor made a fateful decision. She would fake a pregnancy. In early 2020, Taylor began telling Wade that she was expecting, with a due date set for late September. To maintain the illusion, she bought a silicone pregnancy belly, a prosthetic that would transform her body to match the story. She staged doctor's appointments, used fake ultrasound photos, and even went as far as hosting a gender reveal party for their friends and family. Wade, excited by the prospect of becoming a father again, was swept into the lie, never questioning her story. Taylor's deception escalated. She carefully fabricated every detail, building a world where the pregnancy was real. With each passing day, the lie became harder to maintain, but Taylor was too far gone. The fake belly grew with each month, and every time someone asked about her pregnancy, she had to keep up the charade. Wade believed every word. By now, Taylor had convinced herself that she was truly pregnant. The act had become more than just a deception. It was a reality she felt she was living. She could almost feel the baby inside her, hear its heartbeat, even though none of it was real. But as the due date approached, Taylor knew she couldn't keep the lie forever. The pressure mounted. If anyone discovered the truth, if Wade found out, she would lose everything. The lie had become her lifeline, the only thing keeping Wade by her side. Her obsession with maintaining the pregnancy story grew darker. What started as a way to keep Wade's love had now evolved into a dangerous web of deceit. Taylor's need to be wanted, to keep her family intact, drove her to depths she never imagined she would go. As the months passed, the deception reached its peak. The time was coming when she would need to take drastic action. She had created a perfect illusion, but soon the lies would no longer be enough. The stakes were higher than ever. The world she had built with Wade was about to come crashing down, and what followed would forever change everything. Taylor Rene Parker had spent months weaving an intricate lie about her pregnancy, but the illusion was never enough. She needed something more, something real. And so, in the quiet spaces of her mind, the plan took shape. Reagan Simmons-Hancock, a 21-year-old woman, 8 months pregnant with a baby girl named Braxlynn Sage Hancock, would be the target. To Taylor, Reagan wasn't a person. She was simply an obstacle to what Taylor wanted most, motherhood. Though Taylor and Reagan were acquaintances, Parker had done photography for Reagan's wedding. There was nothing to suggest that this would lead to anything more sinister. But Taylor saw an opportunity, and she took it. Reagan, filled with excitement and anticipation for the birth of her daughter, was unaware that the very trust she placed in Taylor would be her undoing. Parker's motive was chillingly simple. She didn't just want a child, she wanted to take Braxlynn. For Taylor, stealing the baby wasn't just about fulfilling a maternal instinct. It was about completing her lie, turning the fake pregnancy into something real. The baby would be proof of her story, the final piece that would allow her to step into the life she had been pretending to live. The plan required more than just taking the baby. It needed careful timing and perfect execution. Taylor had already faked months of pregnancy, but now she needed the ultimate deception, a real baby. Reagan became the perfect target. Her pregnancy was genuine, and Taylor knew she could easily steal the child and pass it off as her own. Taylor's relationship with Reagan was a facade. She knew that if she played her cards right, if she could charm her way into Reagan's life, there would be no suspicion. She used her friendship to get close, even offering advice about pregnancy as if she were a fellow expectant mother. Reagan, trusting and unaware, welcomed Taylor into her home on October 9th, 2020. In the weeks leading up to that day, Taylor carefully set the stage. She had been living the lie of a pregnancy for months, and now it was time to make it a reality. Reagan, full of life and excitement for the future, had no reason to believe that the person standing before her would take everything from her. Taylor lured Reagan into a false sense of security, the trust between them still intact. She had one goal: to take Braxlynn. For Taylor, the child would be her salvation, the proof that everything she had faked was real. It was about control, about taking what she could never have. And so, on that day, the cruel act began to unfold. What started as a desperate attempt to hold on to a relationship soon spiraled into an unthinkable tragedy. Taylor didn't just steal a baby, she stole a future, a dream, and the life of an innocent woman. What Reagan couldn't have known, as she opened her door to Taylor, was that the woman she had once trusted was now her executioner. As we dive deeper into this chilling case, remember to kindly hit the subscribe button and turn on your notifications so you don't miss any updates. Now let's continue uncovering the shocking details. The morning of October 9th, 2020 seemed like any other in the small town of New Boston, Texas, but for Taylor Rene Parker, it was the beginning of a horrific chapter. Months of lies, carefully constructed and performed, were about to reach their terrible climax. After spending weeks fabricating a pregnancy, Taylor was now ready to turn her deception into something shockingly real. Reagan Simmons-Hancock, 8 months pregnant with her baby girl, Braxlynn Sage Hancock, was unsuspecting. She trusted Taylor, a woman she considered a friend, and invited her into her home. Little did she know that the person standing in her living room had an agenda much darker than offering help. Taylor arrived under the guise of offering assistance, perhaps to talk about the challenges of pregnancy or share in the excitement of the approaching birth. But for Taylor, there was no joy, no excitement. There was only one thing she wanted: the baby. For months she had faked a pregnancy, fabricating details of doctor visits, ultrasounds, and even a gender reveal. But now, in the depths of her obsession, she needed a real baby. Once inside Reagan's home, Taylor's true intentions became clear. Without warning, she attacked Reagan, striking her with blunt force trauma. The blows to Reagan's head were brutal, causing severe skull fractures. In a terrifying escalation, Taylor also inflicted sharp force injuries, stabbing Reagan repeatedly. The violence was relentless, leaving Reagan with over 100 stab wounds, many of which were defensive wounds on her hands and arms, a tragic sign of her struggle for survival. But the brutality didn't stop there. Taylor wasn't content with simply killing Reagan. She had come for the baby. Braxlynn, still alive, was taken from Reagan's body through a crude C-section. Taylor, without any medical training, used a scalpel or sharp object to perform the procedure, a gruesome act that tore the infant from her mother's womb. The trauma to the baby was immense, yet she was alive when taken from the house. With Braxlynn in tow, Taylor fled the scene, the weight of her actions pressing down on her. But her escape would be short-lived. Just a few miles away, a state trooper in Idabel, Oklahoma, pulled her over. That officer immediately noticed the umbilical cord still attached to the baby, and the lifelessness of the infant raised suspicion. Parker claimed she had just given birth, but the story didn't add up. Medical personnel soon arrived and rushed the baby to a nearby hospital. Despite frantic efforts to save her, Braxlynn's injuries were too severe. She died shortly after arrival, her small body too fragile to survive the trauma inflicted upon her. The officers who had been investigating Parker's claim soon realized something far more sinister had occurred. The baby's death was a direct result of Taylor's violent actions, a tragedy that could never be undone. What was once a carefully crafted story, a fake pregnancy, a fabricated future, crumbled in the face of cold, undeniable facts. Parker's story began to unravel. Investigators quickly discovered that Taylor had never been pregnant, that the ultrasound photos, the fake belly, and all the lies she had told were just that, lies. But the truth, as devastating as it was, only deepened the horror. Parker hadn't simply stolen a baby. She had murdered Reagan in cold blood and taken her daughter to fulfill her own twisted desire. The aftermath of the crime was chilling. Parker's entire facade of pregnancy, her fake belly, the ultrasounds, even the gender reveal party, had been part of a carefully orchestrated plot. But none of it could hide the violence of the crime she had just committed. Her obsession with motherhood had led her to take the life of another woman, to rip a child from her mother's womb, and ultimately to destroy the future of an innocent family. The investigation that followed would unravel Parker's elaborate web of lies, showing just how far she was willing to go to keep up her deceit. But even as she sat in a holding cell, the magnitude of what she had done began to settle in. The world that had once been built on lies now stood in ruins. Reagan was dead, Braxlynn was gone, and Taylor Parker was left with the undeniable weight of her actions, one that would haunt her for the rest of her life. The horror of Taylor Rene Parker's crime was not easily concealed. What she thought would be a clean escape quickly crumbled as the truth began to surface in the moments after the brutal act. After the state trooper stopped her in Idabel, Oklahoma, the extent of Parker's deception started to unravel. Parker, driving erratically and with the newborn Braxlynn Sage Hancock in her lap, had no idea that her carefully constructed lies were about to come to a crashing halt. The trooper observed the umbilical cord still attached to the baby, raising immediate suspicion. As Parker's story of giving birth began to fall apart, the reality of the crime she had committed set in. The officer quickly called for medical assistance, and when paramedics arrived, they rushed the baby to the hospital. Parker's claim of just having given birth was quickly debunked. Medical staff performed an examination and found no signs of pregnancy, a fact that confirmed what the trooper had already suspected. Taylor Parker had never been pregnant. The silicone belly and fake ultrasounds she had used to maintain the illusion of a pregnancy were exposed for what they were: fraudulent props in her well-planned scheme. As Parker was transported to a local police station, investigators began piecing together the disturbing details of her life and the crime she had just committed. They quickly traced the events back to the murder of Reagan Simmons-Hancock. A thorough investigation into Parker's background revealed a history of manipulations and deceptions, all leading to the fatal decision to abduct and kill Reagan to take her child. The pieces of the puzzle fell into place as authorities uncovered the extent of Parker's preparations. She had spent months crafting a fake pregnancy, fabricating doctor's appointments, faked ultrasound photos, and even staged a gender reveal party to make her lie seem real. But now, her false narrative was exposed. As we dive deeper into this chilling case, kindly hit the subscribe button and turn on your notifications so you don't miss any updates. Now, let's continue uncovering the shocking details. Evidence from the scene and medical testimonies confirmed that Reagan was not just killed, she had been brutally attacked. Investigators discovered over 100 stab wounds on her body, signs of blunt force trauma, and defensive wounds from her attempt to fight back. Taylor's actions weren't just spontaneous. This was the work of a woman driven by a chilling need for control, one who had meticulously planned the attack to take Reagan's life and her baby. The most haunting part of the crime was the fact that Braxlynn was born alive but left to die after the violent, unlawful extraction. Experts confirmed that the baby had been born with a heartbeat, but the trauma from the crude C-section and lack of care led to her death shortly after being taken to the hospital. Parker's attempt to justify her actions, even in the face of this evidence, only added to the horror. As the investigation unfolded, Taylor Parker's web of lies unraveled completely. She was arrested and charged with capital murder, the brutal killing of Reagan, and the kidnapping of her unborn child. The evidence was overwhelming, from the fake pregnancy to the traumatic nature of the crime itself. Her fate was sealed as investigators continued to uncover the extent of her deception and the depths of her obsession. The arrest and the ensuing investigation revealed the true scope of Parker's actions. A calculated, horrific crime fueled by obsession, deception, and a twisted desire to live a life that wasn't hers. It wasn't just a woman desperate to keep a relationship. It was a woman who, in her quest for control, had destroyed everything in her path. When the case against Taylor Rene Parker reached court in the autumn of 2022, The world watched. In the 202nd Judicial District Court of Bowie County, Texas, a 12-member jury gathered to hear gruesome testimony, heartbreaking evidence, and the full scope of a deception that ended in unimaginable tragedy. Over the course of 3 harrowing weeks, prosecutors laid bare what Parker had done. The fatal attack on 21-year-old Reagan Simmons-Hancock, and the abduction of her unborn daughter, Braxlynn Sage Hancock. Medical professionals testified that Braxlynn had a heartbeat after extraction, a fact that transformed the case from one of fetal death to kidnapping and capital murder. The defense argued fiercely. Their central claim: a child cannot be kidnapped if it was never born alive. They attempted to reframe the act as fetal homicide, not kidnapping. But the evidence proved otherwise. Expert testimony, medical documentation, and witnesses told a consistent, chilling story. In just over an hour of deliberation, the jury returned its verdict. On October 3rd, 2022, Taylor Parker was found guilty of capital murder for the killing of Reagan Simmons-Hancock and the kidnapping of her newborn. The courtroom sobered further as the family of the victim read their impact statements. They described the loss: a daughter, a future mother, and an innocent child. The pain echoed through the courtroom, a stark reminder of the lives destroyed. On November the 9th, 2022, the ultimate punishment was handed down: death. The jury chose the harshest sentence under Texas law, concluding that Parker's actions, driven by deception, obsession, and cold calculation, warranted capital punishment. In the months and years that followed, Parker's case continued to draw attention. Her legal team filed appeals, arguing that certain evidence should not have been allowed, including testimony about her past fabrications unrelated to the immediate crime. In 2025, the highest criminal court in Texas, the Court of Criminal Appeals, reviewed her case. On November 7th, 2025, the court unanimously rejected all arguments and affirmed the conviction and death sentence. In its ruling, the court reaffirmed that Braxlynn was alive when she was removed from her mother's womb, satisfying the statutory requirement for kidnapping under state law. The violent extraction, the mother's death, and the attempted cover-up all combined to seal Parker's fate. Today, Taylor Parker remains incarcerated on death row at the O'Daniel unit in Gatesville, Texas, waiting for a date that, as of now, has not been scheduled. The verdict stands. The conviction holds. The story of Reagan and Braxlynn, of lives stolen, of innocence lost, remains a haunting reminder of what can happen when deception becomes obsession and lies become reality. On November 9th, 2022, in a packed courtroom in Bowie County, Texas, the jury delivered its sentence. After less than an hour of deliberation, they found Taylor Rene Parker guilty of capital murder for the killing of 21-year-old Reagan Simmons-Hancock and the kidnapping and death of her unborn daughter, Braxlynn Sage Hancock. The verdict made clear the jury's condemnation of the cruelty, deceit, and violence that had unfolded. As the judge pronounced the sentence, death, the courtroom held its breath. Family members of Reagan, overwhelmed by grief, wept openly while delivering impact statements that laid bare the lifetime of loss they would bear. the child stolen before birth, the mother lost forever, the futures is erased. The judge's final word echoed, "Take her to death row." Shortly after, Parker was transferred to the women's death row facility at Patrick O'Daniel Unit in Gatesville, Texas, where she remains incarcerated. In the years that followed, her sentence stood firm. On November 7th, 2025, Texas Court of Criminal Appeals rejected her appeal, ruling that the evidence had been sufficient, including proof that the infant had been born alive, the legal standard required for the kidnapping aggravator. Her death sentence was upheld. This outcome confirmed the finality of the judgment. A woman who used lies, manipulation, and unthinkable violence to seize a life would pay with her own. The decision closed a grim chapter. A brutal crime met with the full force of justice. The relentless march of justice continued as Rene Parker's final legal battles came to a close. On November 7th, 2025, the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals handed down a decision that would solidify her fate. After months of appeals, Parker's defense team had argued that the evidence in her case was insufficient, hoping to reverse her death sentence. They raised concerns about her mental state, the reliability of witness testimony, and the handling of evidence. But the court rejected all of it. The judges, in a unanimous decision, upheld Parker's conviction for capital murder. The crux of their ruling was undeniable. The baby had been born alive. This detail was pivotal in confirming the charge of kidnapping, which had been central to the capital murder charge. The live birth, even if short-lived due to the injuries Parker caused, was sufficient to meet the legal threshold for a capital crime in Texas. Parker's defense had tried to argue otherwise, but the court found their claims unconvincing. As of 2025, Taylor Parker remains on death row at the Patrick L. O'Daniel Unit in Gatesville, Texas. Despite the finality of the ruling, no execution date has been set. Her case continues to capture attention not only for the brutality of the crime, but for the prolonged aftermath of her conviction. The legal process may be over, but the story of Parker's actions, the lives stolen, the lies told, will continue to echo through the halls of justice and the hearts of those affected. The victims are gone, but their impact remains. As Taylor Parker's case moves into its final chapters, questions remain. While the courts have rendered their decision, federal appeals or clemency petitions could still alter her fate, though no such motions have been filed. Beyond the legal proceedings, this case has sparked discussions about fetal abduction laws, the death penalty, and the psychological factors that drove Parker to commit such horrors. What does her story say about the lengths a person can go to for their own desires, and what does it mean for justice? As we close today's chapter, we invite you to share your thoughts. What should happen next? Remember, this is brought to you by Fatal Verdict. These are not just stories. They are real people, real victims, and real consequences. Until next time, keep living your best life.